Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. You can see our buddy James Vandenberg joining us on the screen. We'll get to James in just a second, former Iowa Hawkeye quarterback. Going to put a nice bow on the 8-5 Hawkeye season. Going to talk to James as we have all year long about the football season. We got James Morris's input last week, former Hawkeye linebacking great. And then after James Vandenberg, we're going to be talking with Jess Settles. He's on the road today, but Jess is going to reach out to us and talk about his memories of Chris Street. Then we'll close out our show with Kenny Smith, Kennington Lloyd Smith III, reporter for the Iowa Hawkeyes for the Des Moines Register and USA Today. So looking forward to bringing that all to you today. James, that being said, my friend, thanks again for joining us. Great to see you. Hope you're having a healthy, happy New Year and you had a great holiday season, Christmas with your wife and kids. Let's talk about that bowl game, Music City Bowl. Hawks looked good. 21-0 victory over a former Hawkeye, Mark Stoops. A redo from last year's bowl game where the Hawks lost 21-17. This time they win 21-0. Let's start with the quarterback. How do you think Joey Labas looked? First time ever taking a real snap in a game, and I'm just curious on your thoughts, the former quarterback, please.
Yeah, no, I thought he did some positive things. I thought the offense did some positive things. I mean, that game a little bit felt like a culmination of the season, and it was no turnovers, or it was defense. It was defensive touchdowns. I mean, it was kind of the whole three-phase deal. I know people don't like that. That's how that defined this season as much as any season, and I thought it was fitting that that's how we went out. I mean, holding anybody in college football scoreless is a big deal. So I don't think our defense gets enough credit.
Yeah. I got to talk to you about the tight ends, though, James. Your best friend when you played, and running backs, but tight ends specifically. Lachey with the great touchdown catch and lunge for the end zone after a nice Sam Laporta block. But before that, James, you got to talk to me as a quarterback what you'd think if you threw the ball to Laporta and saw that run he made setting up that touchdown pass to Lachey.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was a great play. And those two guys probably have done as much for our offense this year as anybody. I mean, they have been the outlet. They have been the spark. They have been the consistent piece that has enabled us to get a little bit of traction here and there. So certainly we'll miss Laporta leaving, but to have kind of a stable there, that's a good thing for a quarterback.
Well, let's talk about it. Cade McNamara transferring from Michigan here to Iowa. All his tight end, Eric All, transferred from Michigan here to Iowa. How do you see all this playing out? And I'm not looking for any inside info from you, but just as a mentality, if you're Joey Labas, you've gone into that situation where you've been the backup to the man and Rick Stanzi, and you know what that's all about. So if you're Joey Labas, or as we as fans, how are we looking at this with all this new talent coming in from the transfer portal and NIL and all this stuff, the changing landscape? Where are the Hawks right now going into spring ball?
Yeah, I think in general, probably everybody just needs to tamp down expectations. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but I mean, in general, it's never quite as good as it sounds, and it's never quite as bad as it seems. So I think it's exciting. I mean, this is a new era of college football. It certainly has people talking and buzzing, and whether you like that or not, I don't know, but it certainly has a little bit of a buzz. But, you know, at the end of the day, there's a team sport. There's going to be 11 guys on both sides of the ball. And those two new guys are going to have to come in and kind of establish themselves within our system. I mean, relationships are the core of everything. That's no different in sports. And so they're going to have to get a jump start. It's a little bit different for Labas. I mean, you bringing that up, because when I was there with Stanzi, I mean, Rick was there for me with 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, this guy's coming in and kind of crowned the guy, which is fine. And clearly he's a phenomenal player. But he's going to have to go in and build that trust, build those relationships, which comes with time and hard workouts and bad times and good times. So I think it's an exciting era. I don't really know what to expect. I really don't know what to expect, because it does seem like it's changing beneath our feet faster than you can keep up with it. But exciting nonetheless. And I think something cool for both fans, I mean, to just be engaged in.
Well, James, I want to say thank you again for a great year of coverage with you. We'll check in with you as the spring and we get into summer before fall camp and games start next year. But another banner year with you. We're finishing the third year with you with great football coverage. So thank you very much. Continued good health and happiness and professional success as you've had at RBC Wealth Management and Corridor Investment Group. So thank you again so much, James.
No, thanks for having me. We'll be on ESPN in no time, Dave.
I like from your lips to God's ears, James. I love it. There he is, the former Hawkeye quarterback, James Vandenberg. Want to give a special footnote to next week's show as James and I were talking a little bit about NIL and the transfer portal. Brad Heinrichs from the Swarm Collective, the CEO and president of that, is going to be joining me next week for the whole show, and we're going to take a deep dive into this and what are the ramifications? Where do we go from here? What is the landscape and what does it look like as we move forward? So Brad Heinrichs going to join me for all next week's Hawkeye TV show. So again, for James Vandenberg, I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. Stay tuned. Jess Settles, special edition talking about the Hawkeye men's basketball team currently, but also his recollections as we approach the 30-year sad anniversary of Chris Street's passing. So Jess Settles is joining us here in just a moment, and then Kenny Smith closing out, Hawkeye reporter for the Des Moines Register and the USA Today. So back with more Hawkeye in just a few moments. Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Jess Settles joining us, and he's at the Denver airport, so busy guy traveling, been calling games. Jess, I'd be remiss leading up into the Chris Street special on the Big Ten Network, and by the time this show airs, it will have already aired initially. Hawk Game is postponed. Again, you'll find this all out when the show airs over the weekend and on Friday night. But unfortunately, a 30-year passing anniversary of Chris Street coming up on this Thursday, January 19th, 1993. I know you were recruited by Chris, and he was kind of like your big brother when you came and visited campus, and you missed that year. You'd have been able to play with him. So, Jess, you've done a great job over the years of joining me on my radio shows and talking about Chris Street. Talk about that tragic moment, if you would, and what it did to your life and all of us here at the Hawkeye in the Hawkeye State.
Yeah, it's a devastating anniversary, right? It's still very raw. It's very heavy. To still miss him. It was kind of surreal sitting down to be interviewed about this documentary, and everyone in Iowa is connected by this. It's not just me. It's not just people who knew him, but it's people who watched him play. And I would like to think that I would have gone to Iowa because I loved Iowa and I grew up close to Iowa and everybody knows my story. But he definitely clarified so many things for me. I believe it was the day I signed or the day I called and committed. I had spent the day on campus with him, going to classes, asking him all these questions, and he just made everything very clear to me, and got to know his family very well in the summer. He hosted me on my recruiting trip and all those things, and then for me to have to step in and kind of take his role as a freshman with him not there it was kind of a heavy burden to carry, and it's a tough night. It's going to be a tough night for me, and it's something that obviously we wish would have never happened.
Yeah, amen to that, Jess. And again, appreciate your candor talking about Chris Street, and of course your relationship with Mike and Patty, his parents, still go on to this day, and they're at Hawkeye home games all the time. And again, it's unfortunate we didn't have the lead-in of the Northwestern game. It's been postponed, and we'll find out a date for that when they're going to play that again. But the Chris Street special on the Big Ten Network, which you're prominently featured in that, Jess. And I want to ask one follow-up, and I know you've got to go, so I want to just take the time to have you talk a little bit about Chris. Not only was he a great basketball player, he was a heck of a baseball player and football player, but I don't think there was any doubt, as you know, in the midway through his junior year when he passed away, he was going to the NBA. He had that kind of talent, right, Jess?
Yeah, there's no question, Dave, and you would know this, and some of your younger viewers probably would not, and listeners, that back then there was a real stigma against us Iowa kids growing up. And it was that, hey, we got scholarships to Iowa and Iowa State, but we really weren't that good, and small town guys can't compete. He kind of broke that stigma, so to speak. And there's no question he would have played. Now, would he have been a lottery pick? No. But would he have earned his way in with his shooting ability and his toughness? And you remember that was back in the Pistons, Knicks, and Bulls era. It wasn't stretch fours. It was guys who could bang and hit, had good hands, unselfish locker room guys. So there's no question, and that's one of the fun things about sports is that you can say somebody's going to make it, they're not going to make it. He's one of those guys that would have definitely had a great opportunity, and miss him all the time. And just had a good talk with Mike Street about 2 weeks ago, and like we always do, it's just like me talking to you. We're just regular Iowa guys catching up and talking family and sports, and it's just it's really emotional and sad that he didn't have an opportunity to get married, have kids, out of the life that all of us live. But God's sovereign, and He's gotten us through all this. But yeah, that's going to be a tough night for me tomorrow. I'm going to be calling a game, so I won't be able to watch it with your listeners and the people in the state of Iowa. I would have liked to do that, but I won't be able to.
Well, he's Jess Settles, Hawkeye legend, great player, and as he just mentioned, followed Chris Street, and he and Chris were good friends and would have had at least, and Jess, it might have been, I would have loved to have seen you and Chris play that 1 year together before he would have gone to the NBA, and then you would have had the rest of your career. But Jess, I do remember on the way out the door here, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. You told me a very touching story, how you found out you had played at a game, you were playing at Winfield Mount Union where you played, and I think you said it was a road game, and you were ready to get on the bus to ride back with your team after a big win.
Yeah, Dave, it was a peak in Packwood, and I couldn't miss that night. I could not miss. I broke the school record at 49. I probably didn't play the whole game, but we got on the bus. Mike Kelker, who you've known many years,
yep.
It comes across the radio. It probably was Jim Zabel. And he said, turn it up, there's something going on. And that's how I found out. And I don't know, buddy. It was terrible. It was terrible. And that's just, it's a tough deal.
Yeah, it really is. Jess, I'm going to let you go. I know you got a flight to catch. I want to thank you very much for taking time to bring us inside the world with Chris Street and you, and what a sad passing. You and I will catch up when we have more time. We'll talk Hawkeye basketball and more uplifting things, but great work by you and the rest of the folks on this documentary on Chris Street's passing for the Big Ten Network. He is former Hawkeye basketball playing legend Jess Settles and current Fox Sports and Big Ten basketball analyst. Jess, thank you so much. We'll catch up with you soon. For Jess Settles, I am Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. We'll be back to close out the show with Kenny Smith, Kennington Lloyd Smith III, Hawkeye reporter for Des Moines Register and USA Today. Back with more in just a few moments.
To have a strong finish, you need an excellent start. It's true on the track and also in the field. That's why Mershman Seeds works tirelessly to deliver cutting-edge technology year after year. Introducing Starting Line, Mershman Seeds' latest advancement in seed treatment, now providing added protection from white mold and sudden death syndrome all season. Ask for Starting Line seed treatment from Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Hi, I'm Joel from Tice Chevrolet. We've lived through some very interesting times the last few months. Ensuring everyone's safety is more important than ever. That is why we're participating in the Chevy Clean program. At your request, we will pick up your vehicle, service it, and return it after we've cleaned it using the current CDC guidelines. This is just another way to work towards exceeding your expectations. So give us a call and let us show you what it means to be part of the Tice Automotive family.
Make next harvest your best harvest with Mershman Seeds. First, our connection to MS Technologies makes us an industry leader for Enlist E3 soybean genetics. Second, Starting Line seed treatment, our most advanced seed treatment, comes standard with added protection against both sudden death syndrome and white mold. Third, upgrade with Saltril and Trunemco for maximum protection against sudden death syndrome and soybean cyst nematodes. There's only one leader in soybean technology, Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Here's our buddy Kenny Smith. Kenny, good seeing you, man. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Kennington Lloyd Smith III, as Paul Feinbaum said on his ESPN SEC show. I saw you posted the anniversary a couple years ago. The greatest name in sports media. I like that a lot. But Kenny with USA Today and Des Moines Register, Hawkeye reporter extraordinaire. And Kenny, let's get to it right away. Hawkeye basketball. By the time this show airs, folks are going to know this already, but the Hawkeye Northwestern game postponed. I'm going to let you fill in the details of why, what happened, and also some prospective dates or makeups looking at ahead of the schedule here. As we record this on Tuesday afternoon, January 17th.
Right. Well, the game was postponed because Northwestern has a player shortage. UConn women's basketball went through something similar earlier in the season where they had too many injuries to play. This appears to be a COVID outbreak with Northwestern's team. They were already playing with short rotations. They've been playing with about 8-man rotations in recent games, and they had an outbreak. They're under the 7-person limit. That's the minimum requirement, 7, so they're under that limit. And through Big Ten guidelines, if a team does not fill that requirement and they provide a valid reason for why it's not safe to play, it does not count as a forfeit, which is a situation that Northwestern is in. So them and Iowa will reschedule a game. It has not been announced yet, but there are some prospective dates. late January into that kind of first week of February seems likely. If not then, maybe the last week of the season going into Big Ten tournament play.
So let's talk a little bit about Patrick McCaffrey. We talked last week with Adam Haluska about this, about being a player, and there was a bit of a snafu if he was going to come back for Northwestern or not. And I thought what you said was very, really on point when you said if a guy is going to make an announcement, let him make the announcement or just show up at the arena and play, because with anxiety, you don't know certain things. So we wish Patrick the best, but look what this team is doing, even with Patrick sitting out. 4-game win streak. But any thoughts on Patrick McCaffrey moving forward?
Yeah, I would just agree with you. I think that it is his decision to make, and it is going to be his moment. With things like anxiety or mental health or anything like that, it really is a day-by-day battle and a struggle. So a few days ago, he could have felt that he was ready to come back against Northwestern. Then he wakes up that day, and maybe he's not feeling it.
And you've got added pressure.
Right. There's that expectation on him already, which could potentially add to his anxiety. So, we're all hoping and praying for him that, he'll be back on the court whenever he's ready. But whenever that moment comes, I believe it should be his moment and his opportunity to say that and announce it, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of the guys, though, the minutes that are being filled. And, again, all the best to Patrick, but let's look at what we have. The facts are the facts. Chris Murray, out of this world.
Yeah.
Second half, what a second half he had. When you're thinking, this is kind of tough. You can't lose a home game. And then you see what Philip Rebrach has been doing. And did you think I'd say Philip Rebrach a double-double machine?
Right,
No offense to Philip, but look what he's done.
Yeah.
Then you take a look at Tony Perkins coming back after not looking so good, and then he has a great game. Aaron Eulis, same thing. But then you had guys like Josh Dix stepping up, Riley Mulvey, Peyton Sanford.
Yeah.
And what, in 3-4 games, and I thought Fran said this, on his radio show the other night too, about Peyton, we never lost faith in him as a team, but me, and Fran said me as a coach, I didn't lose faith in him. You always count on him anyway. But Kenny, you got to admit, in that overtime victory, what he did against Michigan, that was unreal.
Yeah, the fact that he was able to, the fact that he stepped in so seamlessly to a role where he was struggling, and then at the same time, Patrick leaves the team, and he is one of the most prominent scorers on the team. You needed somebody to not only
outside
fill those,
shooter.
you needed someone to fill those minutes. You need somebody to fill that role of a perimeter scorer. And Peyton answered the call, and he's somebody who entered the year with high expectations, and it was kind of difficult to kind of figure out where he fit with the team in that initial starting lineup. They were winning, but it was hard for him to find his role, and then he goes into the slump. He's coming off the bench, and then now it seems like he's fit well into this role where he can be like a six-man, but he's really playing starter level minutes, and he's on the court kind of in those closing moments. So I think the fact that I would kind of continue to ride with him, continue to give him opportunities in the midst of his stretch, and just allowed him to work through it is really paying dividends. And when you have him kind of breaking out of his slump, and now Tony Perkins it feels like he might be starting to turn the corner, and Aaron Eulis, you think about the top 5-6 guys on the team, if they can all start gelling at one time, and then when Patrick comes back, you add him into the mix, you feel good about where Iowa kind of sits in the Big Ten landscape.
We're going to come back. That was men's basketball. So Kenny, buckle up. We're coming back for one more segment. Going to talk some Hawkeye football. Again, back with more Hawkeyed with me, Dave O'Hara, and Kenny Smith in just a few moments.
Hi, I'm Joel from Tice Automotive Family. We are living through some of the most interesting and challenging times many of us have ever seen. Knowing who you can rely on is more important than ever. Many of us turn to our families to get us through, and the same holds true here. From our fair, upfront pricing to exceptional service after the sale, we truly want to exceed your expectations. So give us a call or stop by and let us show you what it means to be part of the Tice Automotive family.
Who do you trust to produce the best deal? A seat company that's chasing technology, or a seat company that's writing a book on it? Merschman Seeds is a leader in technology. We're independent and family owned. Our sister company, MS Technologies, provides access to world-class traits and genetics. And our starting line seed treatment is second to none. Who can you trust with your yields? Merschman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. There's our buddy Kenny Smith, Kennington Lloyd Smith III with the Des Moines Register, USA Today, Iowa beat writer. Kenny, boy, we covered everything with men's basketball. Women's basketball, of course, Bluters Bunch rolling along with the Player of the Year candidate. I'm just going to say the Player of the Year, Caitlin Clark, should be, right? I mean, what are we talking about here? So Caitlin Clark and Bluters Bunch clipping along. Tom Brands' guys, the wrestling program, still number 2 in the country, winning dual meet after dual meet. A couple of close calls they weren't expecting, but they got past it and they're rolling along. So we'll love to be talking Big Ten championships upcoming, and as well as the national championships. So we'll definitely be talking more Hawkeye wrestling here in a little bit, and of course Bluter's Bunch, as well as the women are now at or near the top of the Big Ten. And you mentioned that Ohio State game upcoming is going to be something else between Iowa and Ohio State. But also want to mention a footnote for next week, and I mentioned it earlier in the program with James Vandenberg in that opening segment. Brad Heinrichs will be joining us with the Swarm Collective and talking NIL and all things with Hawkeye athletes. This is really something, Kenny, that's become a big thing at Iowa, University of Iowa, but all over the country. The portal, NIL. And as we talk about this, you gave me a great stat, minus Caden Proctor, who went to Alabama. 84 of 85 Hawkeyes, they got the commits they committed to, 84 of 85. Is that correct?
Yeah, they have 80 at the scholarship limit, which is 85 scholarship players. Iowa's at 84 right now as the portal closes for this winter period. It's going to reopen after spring, but if they want to add somebody, which they technically could still do, the last day to register for Class of Iowa is January 30th, so they could, in theory, add another player, but they would only be able to have space for one.
Mm-hmm. I'm hearing, we're all hearing a lot in the wind about there's going to be some changes. There's a change in mentality. Has Kirk Ferentz embraced the portal and NIL? And are there going to be changes throughout the offense now with quarterback and tight end? And as you mentioned, if they get a wide receiver or all these other things. And I don't want to get you in trouble and I don't want to put you out there.
Yeah.
But when you talk about changes, I don't know how much you can say or don't want to say if you want it to play out. What kind of changes are we talking about potentially? Changes in scheme and mindset? I mean, personnel changes? What do you think? And again, I don't want to get you in trouble, so say as much as you'd like. What changes do you foresee?
Yeah, well, I think that some changes have already gone underway. I think that Kirk Ferentz's embracing of NIL in particular today compared to a year ago is a complete 180. I think that this time last year, NIL was on the back burner, and then seeing how things played out in the recruiting process this year, I think opened Kirk's eyes a lot to what it's going to take to continue to be competitive. And he said so as much in the interview that he did with Tom Kaker, Star Doctrine, about how much commitment is needed in NIL and what Iowa is going to need to do in order to remain relevant. So I think he's completely on board with that. In some ways, he had to embrace the transfer portal just because there was so much attrition leaving the program. He had to bring in players in order to rectify that. But I would even say in some ways that he's embraced change there as well. I mean, a year ago, he said, we're going to bet on us. We're going to bet on the people in the building. Part of that was betting on the quarterback. And the first opportunity he had to upgrade the quarterback, he went and did it with Cade McNamara. So I have to give him some credit. Now, I preface all of that with what's like the big change that fans are looking for, which is going to be in terms of the coaching staff. And I am of the personal opinion, and this is not an intel-based opinion, this is just my gut feeling. I feel like there is going to be a change at offensive coordinator. In terms of, that will come with a change, I think, in scheme. At some point, I know that, one area in particular, route trees with the receivers, is something that could definitely use a lot of work. If he were to retain Brian, I feel like there would have to be more willingness on Kirk Ferentz's part to open up the offense a little bit. Like, if you're going to keep the same coaching staff, change some things philosophically in order to kind of open things up for these new bevy of players that you're getting, because they have added some good players on the offensive side and some upgrades at several positions. I mean, look at what happened. Again, I'm going back to last recruiting cycle. The amount of negative recruiting that Iowa had to endure with their current scheme and their current statistical profile was a huge hurdle to overcome. Kelton Copeland spoke as much about it when we had him for our assistant availability, about how difficult it is. I mean, imagine how tough of a sell it's going to be as a coaching staff to offensive skill players to bring back the exact same coaching staff. And, you can say, oh, we're going to change this, we're going to change that, but until a recruit actually sees it with their own eyes, it's going to be hard to believe. I mean, at this point last year, they did bring back the same staff, but I mean, throughout the offseason, spring practice, summer, into the fall, a lot of conversations about, we're making these type of changes, these type of tweaks, and it didn't materialize in that way. So with recruits making those decisions in the summertime, locking things down before their senior season, there's a great amount of pressure, I feel like, on Kirk Ferentz and Iowa's coaching staff to really give a honest and fair look at what they're doing on offense and trying to change that. So again, they can continue to recruit better on the offensive side of the ball, and remain relevant in the Big Ten and the national landscape.
So again, for Kenny Smith, Jess Settles, James Vandenberg, and my production partner, Michael Merrick. And to you, the viewers, I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. That's all from me. Thanks to all of you. And as always, thanks for staying tuned at the end of the program for these rolling credits to give our advertisers and sponsors the attention and credit they so richly deserve. And as always, to our aforementioned guests and to you, the viewers. That's all from us at Hawkeye. Thanks to all of you.